Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. So we started chapter 48. We are now in 48b. So let's start with some Tehillim. Hallelu et Adonai kol goyim, shabechu kol ha'umim, ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai le'olam. Hallelujah. So this one is called the Seed of Abraham. So if you heard our last teaching and calling all Jews, you'll understand what the line that brought me there came from. So it's right over here. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Israel dwelt in Egypt for no more than 210 years. And that was like, boom, okay, here we go. And then that turned into that. And you should know that this is true. Come and see. The Radal brings evidence from Yocheved, the mother of Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. She was born the very moment the clock began to tick, that is between the outer and inner walls of Egypt. The moment they crossed through between Bein HaChomot, that's where Yocheved was born. She was 130 years when she bore Moses, and 80 years later, when Moses stood before Pharaoh, the timeline reaches 210. But our text will also touch upon this shortly. And I think we did discuss this in certain places, that actually Yocheved and Amram, Moses' parents, they lived through everything and they managed even to get into the land of Israel. Super tzaddikim. When Joseph was taken to Egypt, he was 17 years old. And when he stood before Pharaoh, he was 30 years old. How do we calculate this? Genesis 37:2. These are the generations of Jacob when Joseph was 17 years old. So we have Joseph's age. 1 year in the house of Potiphar, so he's 18. 10 years in the dungeons of Pharaoh, plus 2 more years for putting his faith in man and forgetting that God is in control, right? 17 plus another 13 years, there's 30, right? This is why we read in Genesis 41:1, it came to pass at the end of 2 full years. Vayhi miketz, here's that miketz, shnatayim yamim. That Pharaoh was dreaming, behold, he was standing by the Nile, right? This is what happened and when it happened. What was so significant about those last 2 years? They prepared Joseph to become a ruler and sustainer of the world. We've also discussed this in the topic of Joseph, that it is not befitting of the ruler of the world to rely upon man to remember him, right? So that's why he needed those 2 extra years of cleansing. It wasn't really a punishment for telling the cupbearer, hey, remember me. It was like, well, if you're still doing that, then you're not there yet, son. Let me work on that for you. And so that's exactly what happened. Okay, so for a task that significant, a person must not for a moment rely on the mercies or kindness of men, but God alone. He obviously was not ready at the time, which is why those last 2 years was that was a final significant push or advanced training, if you will. And then the Torah reveals his age again in Genesis 41:46. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from before Pharaoh and passed through the entire land of Egypt. In other words, he was taken out, boom, exactly 30 years. Then there were 7 years of plenty, says Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, plus 2 years of famine. Now Joseph is 39 years of age, right? 7 plus 2, that's 9, 39. So you see the Torah is very clear on the dates, so we should not get them confused. Then we go on. And Levi ben Yaakov, Levi ben Yaakov was 6 years older than Joseph when they descended to Egypt. That was a age gap between them, 6 years, that's it. Joseph was the 11th son, and Levi was the 3rd, right? How could he have only been 6 years? There only been 6 years between them, unless the Midrash note does tell us this, that each pregnancy of the tribes lasted 7 months. 7 months, 7 months, 7 months. Every 7 months, you get another tribe and their twin sisters over there. So with a total of 7 years, that Jacob was at Lavan's house, 11 out of the 12 tribes were born. Right after the birth of Joseph is when Jacob knew he had to leave because his mission was complete, as Joseph was supposed to be the firstborn son of Jacob. There's a whole deeper end times meaning to these verses over here. Why, when Joseph was born, did Jacob all of a sudden realize that he had to leave? Why did he flee Israel to begin with? I'm going off topic, but just keep this in mind. He fled Israel to begin with because Esav, Edom, wanted to kill him, meaning he was in the galut, he was in the exile. And when did he see that it was time to get out of the exile and return home? When Joseph was born. Because what is the job of Joseph? Joseph is who is going to destroy Esav. Joseph is called the Satan of Esav. All right? And so when he was born, now I got the power to do this. That's when the exile is going to end. Going into Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David and all these things, off topic, but anyway, let's get back into it. Genesis 30:25, it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Lavan, send me away and I will go to my place, to my land. Okay, so we have a timeline. And Levi ben Yaakov was 6 years older than Joseph when they descended to Egypt, meaning he was 45 years old at the time. And his days in Egypt were 92 years, making him 137 years of age, as said in Exodus 6:16. And these are the names of Levi's sons after their generations, Gershon, Kehat, and Merari, and the years of Levi's life were 137 years. It says it very plainly in the text. Now, if you read that chapter, you will notice that he's the only one of the brothers who is given accounting of his years. And why is that? Because this chapter and our text is focusing on the lineage of Levi, the house of Levi, the Levites, who produced the lines of the Levites and the priests, and also Moses, and so on. So Levi was 137 years old when he died. And if you read the book of Jasher, which again I always recommend it, we're going to be going through it here as well, he was the last one of the brothers to die, after which the status of the children of Israel began to deteriorate significantly, slowly but surely, until it reached the point of loss of property, loss of rights, beatings, rape, murder, you name it. We've been through it, and history just, goes on to repeat itself. Isn't it funny? I think in the last class I discussed Kristallnacht, like it was almost exactly the time, it was a week before, and look what happened almost on the anniversary. We're returning over there. Pogroms and all. What else are Jews going to do until they understand that we don't belong in the world, we belong over here? No, not even for a visit for a soccer game. That's not going to matter. So, the sooner we understand, the better, right? So we don't get it. God is helping us along. Hence, anti-Semitism comes from God. There you go. No, you don't belong there. You don't belong there. Remind us who we are and where we actually do belong. When Levi descended to Egypt, his wife bore him Yocheved, his daughter. This is to make a point that Yocheved was the actual daughter of Levi. And not only in the biblical sense where the grandparents, the grandfather, the grandmothers, or the ancestors are also known as the father or the mother. Our father Abraham, our father Isaac, our father Jacob, right? The children of Jacob they still refer to Abraham as our father, even though he's their great-grandfather. So here the text shows us Yocheved, the mother of Moses, was the actual daughter of Levi, okay? Which means Levi was the grandfather of Moses. And we know that she was his daughter because it directly quoted from the account of the children of Israel from the book of Numbers. Numbers 26:59. The name of Amram's wife was Yocheved, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother had borne to Levi in Egypt. She bore to Amram Aaron, Moses, and their sister Miriam. And she, Yocheved, was 130 years old when she bore Moses, as said in Exodus 7:7. And Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. This totals at 210 years the numerical value of the word redu, descend. This comes from Genesis 42:2. And he said, behold, I have heard that there is grain being sold in Egypt. This is Jacob saying to his sons, go down there, redu shama, descend there and buy some from there so that we will live and not die. And just another thing to observe in this verse is that the word for shama is actually also Moshe. Shin mem hey, Moshe is mem shin hey. So, in other words, he knew we had Egypt was the place where we had to go to. Jacob had this understanding that that place that the descendants of Abraham are going to be enslaved in, it's Egypt. He heard, first it said he saw, in verse 1 it said he saw, but he told his sons, I have heard. He saw and he heard. In other words, the descent to Egypt was absolutely necessary and was planned from the 6 days of creation. Our text continues and says, but here in chapter 48 it refers, it says from Genesis 15:13. See, just so you understand the way Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer goes, we have a chapter. There's one overlying arc in the chapter, but it can be broken down into many different subchapters. So these teachings will not be 10 hours long. I'm giving you several teachings from a single chapter. So you could line them all up. You'll see the themes over there, but you're going to learn a lot of information, new information. That's why a lot of these can stand on their own. But obviously, I highly recommend that you watch them one after the next so you have a better picture. Okay, so it says here in the chapter, meaning chapter 48 from Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, referring to Genesis 15:13, and they will enslave them and oppress them for 400 years. Rabbi Elazar ben Arach said to him, to who? To Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who made the previous claim, that the Holy One, blessed be he, began to count the 400 years from the time of the seed of Abraham, specifically Isaac, as said in the same verse. And he said to Abraham, you shall surely know that your seed will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will enslave them and oppress them for 400 years. And how do we know that God was referring to Isaac and not Ishmael? As it is written in Isaac from Genesis 21:12. And God said to Abraham, be not displeased concerning the lad, Ishmael, and concerning your handmaid, Hagar. Whatever Sarah tells you, hearken to her voice, for in Isaac will be called your seed. This should settle any kind of debate as to who is considered the seed of Abraham. Okay? Yes, Abraham is the father of many nations. And yes, he had children once more with Keturah, who is Hagar, after Sarah's death, and bestowed upon them gifts and sent them to the Far East. That's why we see a lot of similarities between ancient, like Far Eastern cultures, ancient China and Japan and the like, to our culture today. A lot of the words are similar. The way they even write their characters are similar to the way we write our ancient Hebrew characters. Also, they have these strange black boxes that they put on their heads and wrap around their arms. Also, acupuncture pressure points along the arm fit exactly to where we have to put on the tefillin. We've discussed this here before, but the things that the nations who received these gifts from Abraham do physically, we go above that. We do it already spiritually. So it's a beautiful thing, but to actually find the points of origin, he sent them to the Far East. Wow, where does it all come from? Abraham, indeed. Okay. So, and though Ishmael is of the seed of Abraham, that seed is not complete without Sarah, his wife, as they both began to do a correction for Adam and Eve. So in other words, who is the seed of Abraham? It is exclusively Isaac, and we'll see in a minute, okay? Another confirmation is from Genesis 17:19-21. And God said, indeed, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. In other words, it's through Isaac, not with everybody else, that everlasting covenant. It is a different covenant, right? The covenant that goes through Abraham. But Abraham's seed is whoever comes from Isaac and then Jacob. That is the covenant of God. And regarding Ishmael, who is also considered the seed of Abraham, but not this covenant. And regarding Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and I will multiply him exceedingly. He will beget 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. You need 12 princes from Ishmael to counter the 12 princes, meaning the 12 tribes of Israel. And also Esav, 12 princes over there. But, God continues, my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year. In other words, it's very simple here. Very simple here. People walk, I'm the seed of Abraham. No, you're not. Read. You need two people. You need a man and a woman, right? Okay. And so Isaac and Jacob after him and his children, the children of Israel, the 12 tribes, we are all called the seed of Abraham, but not the rest of the nations. What makes that distinction? Why can't everyone today run around and say, I am the seed of Abraham? Well, because again, that is not what it says. It is in the plain text. But who else can be counted as the seed of Abraham? This is beautiful. Please pay attention. Abraham and Sarah are the father and mother of all who? All the converts. You see, when someone converts to Judaism, you get a new name, and your father and mother's name changes to Abraham and Sarah. If my name was Johnny Bravo, and now I changed it to Yonatan something, it would be Yonatan ben Avraham, right? Because Avraham is my father. Convert. You get it. Okay. Listen to what it says in Midrash Agadah from Genesis chapter 17. And Abram fell upon his face, and God spoke with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall become a father of a multitude of nations. V'ha'ita le'av hamon goim. And your name shall no longer be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. And I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings will emerge from you. From you. This is one thing, as these are part of the nations of the world, some of which who will eventually and ultimately come against Israel. They don't receive the covenant of Abraham. You see, blessings and gifts, sure, but not the covenant. And I will establish my covenant between me and between you and between your seed after you throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant, to be with you for a God and to your seed after you. And I will give you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings, the entire land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be to them for a God. Only to the seed of Abraham will they receive this covenant, which is in next verse. And God said to Abraham, and you shall keep my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout their generations. What is the covenant? This is my covenant, which you shall observe between me and between you and between your seed after you, that every male among you be circumcised. That's just like that's your stamp, if you will. That's your entrance, right? And you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of a covenant between me and between you. It says basar olatchem. The translation says foreskin because we know where it's to be circumcised. But olah, there are several places on the body. It's not only in your brit. It's also here. This is on your ear. This is also called olah. And arel sfatayim, when Moses says, I'm uncircumcised of the lips, that means your lips are also considered a type of olah. So how do we know what's what? This is where you have the oral law. Okay. And you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, as we know, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and between you. And at the age of 8 days, every male shall be circumcised to you throughout your generations, one that is born in the house, or one that is purchased through money from a foreigner who is not of your seed. Those born in the house and those purchased for money shall be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant. Very interesting enough, why is Yitzchak called Yitzchak? Yud Tzadik Chet Kuf, right? Yud is, what happened with Yud? I'm drawing a blank right now. Tzadik, I could tell you, is 90. Sarah was 90. Kuf was 100, for Abraham was 100. Oh, I know now, sorry. Chet is for the 8 days of circumcision, and 10, which is Yud, that's the number of trials that Abraham had. Okay, so anyway, that's why Yitzchak was called, and it ended with Yitzchak. So there you have the 10, 98, and 100, signifying his name and the events that took place. So not only those who are the direct descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, meaning Israel, but all those who join Israel and are circumcised as a result. Now, if you ask anyone who's been through the conversion process, the circumcision is the final step that is done, right after which you go into a mikveh and then welcome to the mishpacha. I've known people in the past are like, hey, I'm circumcised and I'm part of Israel. No, you ain't, not even close, not even a little bit. You just mutilated yourself. Good for you, and it means nothing. Though they think, but it's okay, let them think. There's a process that has to go through, right? You can't just circumcise yourself. It just doesn't work that way. We've learned that Abraham kept the entire Torah even before it was given. And so if you wish to be part of the seed of Abraham, you must do the same, right? I went off a bit over there, but again, I'm going to go back to the verse to focus on, and you shall be a father of many nations. Whoever converts and ultimately circumcises. When you say you circumcise, that means you're already following the whole Torah. That's what that means. Then guess what? If you finally convert and circumcise, Abraham shall be called your father. From here, Rabbi Yehuda says that a ger, a convert, who brings first fruits and says the same prayer as a natural-born Jew, from Deuteronomy 26. And it will be when you come into the land which the Lord your God gives you for an inheritance, and you possess it and settle in it, that you shall take of the first fruits of the ground, which you shall bring from your land because it's yours, which the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall put them into a basket and go to the place which the Lord your God will choose to have his name dwell there, which we obviously know where that is. And you shall come to the Kohen, who will be serving in those days, whoever it may be, and you will say to him, I declare this day to the Lord your God. Why your God? Because I could have in my mind a different God, but your God, that I have come to the land which the Lord swore to our forefathers to give us. You would think if you are, a convert, that our forefathers, that your forefathers, now I'm just joining the family from here. No. It goes like this. You're going way back and you're joining the family from the beginning. If you convert properly, and I do mean properly, people, then yes, you get to say that too, because Abraham is also the father of all the converts. This is, of course, different from Noahides. Noahides are called Bnei Noach, literally the sons of Noach. Ben Avraham, converts, Bnei Noach, the Noahides. Now again, it's a different function, but almost any Noahide can convert and have the same exact rights as any of the tribes of Israel. What's the difference between a Noahide and a Jew? 7 commands versus 613. So let's continue. From the day Isaac was born until Israel left Egypt, 400 years had passed. That is also how we know Isaac's birthday, as he was born on the day of the Exodus, the 15th of Nisan. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, but is it not written in Exodus 12:40? And the habitation of the children of Israel that they dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. It's written there. He said Israel dwelt in Egypt 210 years. And until Jacob descended, it was 5 years that 2 more tribes were born to Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. We understand from this that Joseph's sons were born on the 4th year of plenty, right? So we have the 7 years of plenty. He's born in the 4th year of plenty, meaning he got 3 years left over there. 2 years of famine, that's 5. They descended, meaning Jacob met his grandchildren when they were 5 years old. The book of Jasher confirms this when it says that Joseph was 34 years old when all this took place. Ephraim and Manasseh, of course, were of the 12 tribes, as said in Genesis 48:5. And now, as for your 2 sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt, said Jacob to Joseph, until I came to you to the land of Egypt, they were mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine like Reuven and Shimon. They're one of my boys, right? Why did Jacob include them in his name? Because God chose Israel, right? Israel is God's firstborn son. Israel is God's chosen. And Israel, his name was greater than Joseph. All due respect to Joseph, right? Joseph, but God chose Israel. And so now they are taken under the wings of Israel. Now they too can receive the blessings of the children of Israel. And so a total of 215 years from the time of the birth of the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, days and nights totaling 430 years. This is why we see in Genesis 46:20, all the descendants of Jacob were mentioned because the 12 tribes must be complete. And to Joseph were born in the land of Egypt, whom Osnat, the daughter of Potipharah, the governor of On, bore to him, Manasseh and Ephraim, because Manasseh was the older one, right? Now look what it says in our text. For the Holy One, blessed be he, hastened the time of the end for the sake of the patriarchs and matriarchs, who are the mountains and hills of the world, or the eternal mountains. As said in Song of Songs 2:8, the sound of my beloved, behold, he is coming, skipping over the mountains, jumping over the hills. Rabbi Eliezer says, all those years that Israel dwelt in Egypt, they sat securely without worry. Like we said, and you can read this in the Midrash or in Jasher, they lived very, very well. Because Joseph, they held all the governmental positions of power. They were the wealthiest, and of course they lived separately from the Egyptians, turning the land of Goshen into a utopia. Until the time where Yignon from the descendants of Ephraim came and said, the Holy One, blessed be he, has revealed to me that I shall take you out of Egypt. No one's confirming that. Okay. Or in other words, guess who's your Messiah? This guy. That's what he told them. So here, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer gives us an actual name. And this is one version of the story where the book of Jasher doesn't name names and gives a slightly different version of the story. Again, they all end up in the same place, and here we're going to make it actually one story. In both stories, and this we know from many other sources, the tribe of Ephraim did leave Egypt 30 years early, and they were killed on their way to Israel. Almost the entire tribe got wiped out. So let's read first from the book of Jasher what it says, and then we'll go into what our text says. At that time, in the 180th year of the Israelites going down to Egypt, meaning 30 years exactly before the 210, there went forth from Egypt valiant men, 30,000 on foot. Also, the numbers are wrong here, but 30,000 on foot from the children of Israel, who were all of the tribe of Joseph, of the children of Ephraim, the son of Joseph. Okay. For they said the period was completed which the Lord had appointed to the children of Israel in the times of old, which he had spoken to Abraham, referring to the prophecy that Abraham received. And these men girded themselves, and they put each man the sword in the side, and every man his armor had armor upon him, and they trusted in their strength. Well, you should never do that, right? And they went out together from Egypt with a mighty hand. But they brought no provision for the land, only silver and gold, not even bread for the day did they bring in their hands. For they thought of getting their provision for pay from the Philistines, and if not, they would take it by force. We'll either buy our food or we'll kill them and take it. And these men were very mighty and valiant men. One man could pursue 1,000, and two could rout 10,000. So they trusted to their strength and went together as they were. And they directed their course toward the land of Gat. And they went down and found the shepherds of Gat feeding the cattle of the children of Gat. So where is Gat today? This is where Gaza is today. That's where the Philistines sat. And they said to the shepherds, give us some of the sheep for pay, so we may eat, for we are hungry, for we have eaten no bread this day. And the shepherds said, are they our sheep or cattle that we should give them to you, even for pay? So the children of Ephraim approached to take them by force. And the shepherds of Gat shouted over them that their cry was heard at a distance, so all the children of Gat went out to them. And when the children of Gat saw the evil doings of the children of Ephraim, they returned and assembled to the men of Gat, and they put each man his armor and came forth to the children of Ephraim for battle. And they engaged with them in the valley of Gad. and the battle was severe. By the way, this Valley of Gat, this is also said, like we said, one of the opinions is that this is actually the Valley of the Dry Bones, and these are the dry bones that Ezekiel would then resurrect. In another teaching of Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, they were actually all the children of Judah who were in Babylon at the time, who were killed by Nebuchadnezzar for actually bowing down to the idol. He killed them all. Then they were a massive valley of dry bones. In any case, both things are very interested. Go find those teachings. Let's continue. And they engaged with them in the Valley of Gat, and the battle was severe, and they smote from each other a great many that day. And on the second day, the children of Gat sent to all the cities of the Philistines that should come to their help, saying, Come up to help us, come unto us and help us, that we may smite the children of Ephraim, who have come from Egypt to take our cattle and to fight against us without cause. Now the souls of the children of Ephraim were exhausted with hunger and thirst. The nefashot, the bodies, the physical aspect, were exhausted from hunger and thirst, for they had not eaten any bread for 3 days. And 40,000 men went forth from the cities of the Philistines to the assistance from the men of Gat. And these men were engaged in battle with the children of Ephraim, and the Lord delivered the children of Ephraim into the hands of the Philistines. And they smote all the children of Ephraim, all who had gone forth from Egypt. None were remaining but 10 men who had run away from the engagement. For this evil was from the Lord against the children of Ephraim, for they transgressed the word of the Lord, going forth from Egypt before the period had arrived, which the Lord in the days of old had appointed Israel. And the Philistines also there fell a great many, about 20,000 men, and their brethren carried them and buried them in their cities. And the slain of the children of Ephraim remained forsaken in the valley of Gat for many days and years, and they were not brought to burial, and the valley was filled with the men's bones. Valley of the dry bones. And the men who escaped from the battle came to Egypt and told all the children of Israel all that had befallen them. Okay, so that's from the book of Jasher. So back to our text. Ignon from the descendants of Ephraim, came and said, The Holy One, blessed be he, has revealed to me that I shall take you out of Egypt. And the sons of Ephraim, with their proud hearts, it says, who were from the seed of royalty, and mighty warriors indeed, men of strength and valor, physical strength and valor, stood and took their wives, their sons, their daughters, and they left Egypt. So according to Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer and the commentary thereof, it says 200,000 left, not 30 or 40,000. So let's address a few key points here. One, why were their hearts proud? Because of the blessing of their tribe by Jacob from Genesis 48. And Joseph saw that his father was placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, and it displeased him, because instead of, he changed the hands. And it displeased him, so he held up his father's hand to remove it from upon Ephraim's head, to place it on Menashe's head. And Joseph said to his father, Not so, father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will be great. But his younger brother, meaning here's the blessing for Ephraim, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his children's fame will fill the nations. This all but guarantees success, no? No. 2, how are they of the seed of royalty? I think we know. Because Joseph, their father, was viceroy and ruler of Egypt for 40 years. Remember, Pharaoh was the chairman emeritus, okay? But Joseph was really the king of Egypt. He was running everything for 40 years. And when Pharaoh died and he had a son, Joseph raised his son, grooming him to be the next Pharaoh. But he was the sole ruler over the ancient world for 40 years. Meaning, Joseph was the single longest ruling king in history at 80 years, uninterrupted. Naturally, his sons and their families were princes and rulers on their own right. So, indeed, royalty. 3, how were they mighty warriors and men of strength and valor? Where did all this come from? Not only were they spiritually strong because they followed the teachings of Joseph, their father, and Jacob, their grandfather, right? Joseph never lost that. That was his strength in Egypt. He was completely separated from them, yet he held on to the teachings of his father. But also they led all the military campaigns throughout the 80 years of their family's reign. If you read the book of Jasher, you will see that Joseph went to war and he was a brilliant tactician. He went out to war all the time. Joseph was leading the charge. He wasn't just a pretty boy who was very smart. He was very well-rounded. And even strength in the literal sense. Both Ephraim and Manasseh, the sons of Joseph, they possessed the strength of the sons of Jacob. As Manasseh came and dropped Shimon with one punch to the back of his head, when none of the elite Egyptian guard could even come near him. When they said, "Seize him," he would shout and flex, and they would be flung. Joseph said, "Take him down." Manasseh came, and he was like, "This guy's disobeying my father." Punched him once, dropped him, and Shimon turns to his brothers and says, "This guy's got our kind of strength. We cannot tell anybody, because if they know that other people other than the sons of Jacob has this kind of strength, we're done for." But he had the strength of the sons of Jacob because he was in fact from the sons of Jacob. All right. So they were mighty men of valor. They actually had this physical strength as well. 4. How could they have left Egypt if there were incantations all around placed by Bilam, which prohibited any slave from leaving? Because we've learned before that any person who came into Egypt and was in servitude, they were not allowed to leave. You had the 10 gates where they entered from, right? Where we read they entered from 10 different gates. That's why you had the 10 plagues breaking down these gates and all the forces around Egypt where they could go free. So how indeed could they have gone free? This question was actually asked in our group. It's a fantastic question. So Michael, good question. Thank you for that. And 2 reasons. 1, though they were eventually considered part of Israel because of their royal ties and all their family had done for the welfare of Egypt, they were never fully considered slaves. They're like, "Well, we did get very, very wealthy and powerful because of you, so you're not exactly on the slaves things." But 2, the evil eye, magic, or any other kind of incantation has no hold over Joseph or his seed, so they could come and go as they please. And we covered this in our discussion about there's like 3 or 4 classes in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer about Joseph, right? The Ain Hara had no command over Joseph or his seed till this very day. This is why Joseph is among the nations. Joseph represents the 10 lost tribes. And this is why he's amongst the nations. So the Satan should not be like, "Oh, I see them popping up from within Christianity. These are the converts that are coming up over there." Because if the Satan sees this, they're going to try and hold him back, right? But the Satan has no sway over Joseph. Joseph is the more powerful one. Okay, so when they left Egypt, our text says that the Egyptians pursued them and killed them. For of them it says in Psalm 78:9, but we're also going to read verse 8, "And they should not be as their forefathers," meaning the tribe of Ephraim, "a stubborn and rebellious generation," that particular generation, "who did not prepare its heart and whose spirit was not faithful to God." They were given exactly a time and a secret code. Verse 9, "The sons of Ephraim, armed archers, retreated on the day of battle." They were considered the rebellious generation of that day. To settle this question as to who killed them, the Egyptians or the Philistines, who were in Gat, which is today's Gaza. So, the Radal explains that though they came from Philistia, which was from the southern parts of Europe, since the Philistines are from Japheth, right? Since they were already settled and born in Gat, the land of Canaan, which was under Egyptian rule, they were considered Egyptians, right? This isn't so far-fetched, because this is the same idea of the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, also known as the Canaanites. But you include the 7 nations, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Thisidites, the Dadidites, all the Dadidites, different peoples, but all considered Canaanites. Because why? They were in the land of Canaan. under the district rule of Egypt, so technically they were all Egyptian, right? So you have people who are already born in Egyptian provinces, they're considered Egyptians. Very simple. So let us ask this question. Why did they leave early? Because they miscalculated. You see, they were given an exact date for when the exile would end. 400 years from the birth of the seed of Abraham. Some of this could be very convoluted, but we'll see exactly. What they didn't take into account was the time the prophecy was given, which was 30 years prior. You see, they went out from when it was given, but they should have waited to when the prophecy actually began to get that traction, which was when Isaac was born. And then they wouldn't have to leave on their own. God would do it for them, right? In other words, as we clearly saw. But still, it said 400 years in bondage in the land that is not their own. So they're thinking this. And they were only there for how many years? 210 years. With 67 or 68 of those years, those were in hard labor. So if you were alive and on the ground at that time, as far as they were concerned, it wasn't going to happen for another 200 years, right? Because the bondage only started not too long ago. But there was another condition, of course, and that is that someone would come along who would check certain boxes. To simplify here for us, said saying a proper catchphrase, right? There are boxes that we need to check for who is going to be the Mashiach, and thus far, no candidate has come close. Otherwise, just any fool can come along, claim to be Messiah, people will believe him, as there have been many false prophets and messiahs throughout our history. Many of them. This is not something like, oh, one guy did. No, many of them. Which is why we actually do have this checklist as to who it could possibly be. And I can tell you with certainty, he has yet to come because we're still here. Nothing ended yet. And he is supposed to help and usher in the new age at the end of this one. So we need the right guy at the right time with the right circumstances. Now we've been given the time clock that runs out, right? We have a time clock. What is a time clock? Yes, this is the 6,000th year. This is the final time for the whole story to close. This is the latest that it could happen. How far are we? Right now, 215 years from the final end-all be-all, right? Does God not say in Isaiah that he can also shorten the time of the exile? Yes, he can, right? Yes, he did. Did God not shorten the prototype for the final redemption in Egypt just as he did the first? We pray that God does in fact shorten our time, right? Just as he did with the first one. And until that time comes, we follow no false messiahs. We are not impressed with signs and with wonders performed by men. It says over there in Deuteronomy, someone comes along and does all these things. Don't be impressed. See what they say. Listen to what they say. See how they act. If it goes according to the Torah, then you can start to consider it. Then you can start to test them. But if they're saying things that has nothing to do with the Torah and they're showing you signs and wonders, do not be impressed. As God says, I'm doing this to test you. So, okay, no problem. We trust no man, only God. We stay the course. We keep learning and we keep teaching. We keep living the best lives that we can do. Again, whether we are children of Abraham or descendants of Abraham, descendants of Noah, it doesn't matter. We all have to do what we need to do. The redemption is not just for Israel. The redemption is for the whole world. But the focus is obviously upon the seed of Abraham, by which the promises have been given, and through the seed of Abraham, that's where all the promises to the world will go. I will bless those who will bless you, and those who curse you, I will damn. We have to just see what's happening today, right? Who is standing? Like we said, the lines are being drawn in the sand. And it'll be very, very obvious. There's not going to be any kind of question when it comes down to it. So everyone's eyes got to be open right now. You have to look around because everything that's happening, this is a lie and it's a distraction. Everything is a show. And there is no one for us to rely upon except our Father in heaven. And again, I say this. With great fear, I say this. Our history has shown us whenever we put our faith in a man to come and solve all our problems, usually that person turned around and bit us. In other words, if right now your guy's the guy, the golden-haired man, and now the Jews and the Haredi Jews in America are saying he will bring and this and that, first of all, less people are going to make Aliyah to Israel because now life in America is going to be good again. And other Orthodox Jews are saying, oh, he's going to bring stability and everything's going to be good. So, in other words, you stay there. Let's continue to delay the redemption because Jews aren't coming to Israel. Because of that, again, do I have any personal feelings towards this guy? No, I don't know him. I find him highly entertaining. Nevertheless, be very wary. What, you think God can't make him flip like that? It's all about Israel. So if Israel is comfortable outside because of this man, then this man, that same one you put your faith in, will make life very uncomfortable for you. Well, you will have no choice. Keep that in mind. So, let's bravely and humbly take a page out of the book of Abraham and believe God that he will make good upon his word, and may our faith be accredited to us as righteousness. And that's our class for today. Thank you all for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.